They hired a PI to smear me, all because I dared dream of college. From age 7, Emily, was forced to mother 6 younger siblings in our stifling Atlanta home, while my parents blew government aid on their whims. But when I tried to break free, their dark secret dug their own grave. Our cramped Atlanta townhouse was always filled with crying babies and the stench of dirty diapers. My mom, Linda, treated pregnancy like a habit, while Dad, Mike, let his construction wages vanish in bets and beer. They called it family tradition. The eldest daughter sacrifices everything to raise the kids. I learned to change diapers before tying my shoes, cooked porridge for my siblings before homework. At 7, I was punished for letting a baby cry too long while Mom slept till noon. "This is love, Emily," she said, eyes cold as stone. "You'll get used to it." By 10, I was caring for 4 siblings, bathing, feeding, putting them to bed. My parents vanished for date nights or casino trips, leaving me with an endless chore list. I remember collapsing in the kitchen, still clutching a bottle from exhaustion. Complaining only got Mom's smirk. "You'll have a husband one day. Pass this burden to your eldest daughter." It wasn't comfort, it was a curse. I started dreaming of freedom, college, a life where I wasn't a mom as a kid. But every step toward that dream, my family tightened the chains. They didn't know I was quietly plotting to break this cycle, and their secret would be my key to escape. That cramped house in Atlanta wasn't just a home. It was a prison where I, Emily, became a mother at 7 years old. The chaos never stopped. Screaming babies, dirty dishes piling up, and my parents, Linda and Mike, treating their responsibilities like a game they could opt out of. By the time I was 10, I wasn't just helping with my 4 younger siblings. I was their everything. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. to heat bottles, change diapers, and pack lunches, all before dragging myself to school. My hands were chapped from washing clothes, my eyes heavy from sleepless nights, rocking a crying toddler. If I dared let a baby wail too long, Mom's sharp voice would cut through the house. "Emily, do your job." My job. At 10 years old, Mom, Linda, was a master at playing the victim. She'd sit at the kitchen table sipping coffee, claiming her pregnancies wore her out, while I scrubbed pots or soothed a feverish sibling. She'd cash government assistance checks meant for childcare, but that money never saw a daycare. It went to her new dresses or Dad's late-night gambling trips. Dad, Mike, was worse. A construction worker with a temper, he'd come home reeking of whiskey, tossing empty promises about providing for the family, while his paychecks vanished into slot machines. They both leaned on this twisted idea of family tradition. The eldest daughter sacrifices her life to raise the kids. No questions asked. If I hesitated, Dad's belt would answer. By 13, I was juggling 6 siblings. The youngest, a newborn, clung to me like I was her real mother. I'd carry her on my hip through the grocery store, dodging stares from strangers who thought I was a teen mom. School became a distant second priority. I'd fall asleep in math class, dreaming of equations instead of diapers, only to be woken by a teacher's pitying look. "Emily, you've got potential," they'd say, but potential didn't matter when I had to rush home to cook dinner for 7. Mom would catch me reading college brochures and laugh. "College? You're the backbone of this family. Don't get big ideas." Her words stung, but they lit a fire in me. I started hiding those brochures under my mattress. Next to a notebook where I scribbled my escape plan. The worst part wasn't the work. It was the isolation. My friends stopped inviting me to hang out. They didn't understand why I was always busy. My siblings, too young to know better, called me Mama instead of Emily, and each time it felt like a piece of me was erased. I loved them, but I hated the role I was forced into. At night, when the house finally quieted, I'd stare at the ceiling, wondering if this was all my life would ever be. But deep down, I knew I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting to break a cycle that had trapped generations of women in my family. Mom and Dad thought they could keep me chained forever, but they didn't know I was already sharpening the key to my freedom. The day I got the acceptance letter from Emory University felt like the first time I could breathe. A full-ride scholarship, my ticket out of that suffocating Atlanta house, where I'd been a mother to 6 siblings since I was 7. I was 17, clutching that letter in my trembling hands, imagining a life where I could be Emily, not Mama. But that dream crashed the moment my mother, Linda, stormed into my room, her face twisted with rage. "I'm pregnant again," she announced, her voice like a slap. "You're not going anywhere. Family comes first." My heart sank. Another baby, number 7, meant another chain locking me to this life. Linda didn't stop there. She sat me down with a new family schedule, a handwritten chart that mapped out my life as the primary caregiver for the new baby and my 6 siblings. "College is selfish," she said, her eyes cold. "You think you're better than us? This is your duty." My father, Mike, backed her up, his voice gruff from the living room. "We didn't raise you to abandon your blood." I wanted to scream that I wasn't abandoning anyone. I just wanted a chance to live. But their words were a wall, and I was trapped behind it. The real blow came a week later. I'd been prepping for the final scholarship interview, practicing answers between diaper changes and homework help. But that morning, my youngest sister spiked a fever and started convulsing. I rushed her to the ER, holding her tiny body in the back seat of our beat-up van, praying she'd be okay. Hours later, exhausted and shaken, I realized I'd missed the interview. I called the scholarship office, begging for a second chance, but the coordinator's voice was firm. "We need commitment, Emily. You didn't show up." My mother's response when I told her? "See, you're needed here. Let go of those pipe dreams." I cried myself to sleep that night, the torn acceptance letter hidden under my pillow. My parents thought they'd won, that they'd crushed my spirit, but they didn't know I was already plotting my next move. I'd heard about a community college nearby with financial aid. It wasn't Emory, but it was a start. I started sneaking applications into my backpack, filling them out in the school library during lunch. Every word I wrote felt like a rebellion, a refusal to let their tradition define me. I didn't know then that my parents were watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back, and that their betrayal would push me to the edge of everything I'd ever known. My dream of Emory University was in tatters, but I wasn't done fighting. At 17, trapped in our chaotic Atlanta home, I started building my escape plan in secret. The community college downtown became my new hope, a chance to study, to breathe, to be more than the surrogate mother to my 6, soon-to-be 7 siblings. Every night, after tucking the kids into bed and scrubbing the last of the dishes, I'd sneak into the bathroom, the only place I could be alone. There, under the dim flicker of a bare bulb, I filled out applications, my pen scratching furiously against the paper. Each word felt like a step toward freedom, a defiance of my parents' suffocating family tradition. To pay for college, I needed money they couldn't touch. I landed a part-time job at a corner coffee shop, claiming the late shifts so Mom and Dad wouldn't notice. Every tip, every dollar, went into a worn-out sneaker hidden in the back of my closet. I'd count the crumpled bills in the dark, heart racing, knowing each one was a brick in the wall between me and their control. My 16-year-old sister Ava caught me one night, her eyes wide as she saw the cash. "You're leaving, aren't you?" she whispered. I froze, expecting her to rat me out, but instead she hugged me. "I won't tell. Just promise you'll take me with you someday." Her trust was a lifeline, and I swore her to secrecy. But secrets don't stay buried in a house like ours. I got careless, leaving a community college acceptance letter tucked inside my algebra textbook. One evening, I came home from a shift, the smell of espresso still clinging to my clothes, to find Mom sitting at the kitchen table, the letter in her hands. Her face was a storm. "You think you can sneak away? Betray us?" she hissed. Dad loomed behind her, his voice low and menacing. "You're not going anywhere, Emily. You owe this family." They tore the letter to shreds, their words cutting deeper than the paper. Mom's eyes burned with something darker than anger, fear that I'd break the cycle she'd been chained to her whole life. I didn't sleep that night. Their rage confirmed what I'd always suspected. They'd do anything to keep me trapped. But I wasn't the scared little girl who changed diapers at 7 anymore. Ava's promise and my hidden savings were my weapons now. I didn't know then that my parents were already plotting something far worse than tearing up a letter, something that would turn my rebellion into a fight for survival. My parents' rage over my college application was just the beginning. I thought I'd seen the worst of their control, but I was wrong. At 17, I was still pouring every ounce of myself into raising my 6 siblings in our cramped Atlanta home, all while hiding my plans to escape to community college. But Mom and Dad weren't just gonna let me slip away. They had a plan so cruel it shattered any illusion I had about family loyalty. They hired a private investigator to follow me, to twist my every move into a lie that would chain me to them forever. It started with whispers. I'd catch Mom on the phone, her voice low, glancing at me like I was a stranger. Then, one night after my shift at the coffee shop, I noticed a man lingering across the street, snapping photos as I wiped down tables. I brushed it off as paranoia until the social workers showed up at our door. My parents had called Child Protective Services claiming I was neglecting my siblings, leaving them hungry and unsupervised while I partied after work. The investigators' photos were their evidence, grainy shots of me, exhausted, slumping at the shop's counter, spun into a story of a reckless, unfit caregiver. My mother's crocodile tears sealed the act. "We're just worried about the kids. Emily's out of control," she sobbed to the caseworker. I stood there speechless as the social worker questioned me. My hands shook, still raw from scrubbing bottles that morning. Neglect. I'd been cooking, cleaning, and parenting since I was 7. But the photos painted a different picture, and my parents' lies were airtight. That night, they escalated their betrayal. Dad handed me a garbage bag with my clothes and growled, "You're done here, get out." They changed the locks, leaving me on the porch, the humid Atlanta air clinging to my skin. I slept in a nearby park, curled up on a bench, my heart pounding with fear and betrayal. My own family had turned me into a villain to keep me trapped, but they underestimated my sister Ava. At 16, she'd been watching, listening, and recording. She'd captured Mom and Dad on her phone, laughing about hiring the investigator to teach Emily her place. That recording was a bomb waiting to explode, and Ava slipped it to me as I left, whispering, "Use this, fight back." I clutched her phone like a lifeline, knowing it could be my only chance to expose their lies. My parents thought that they'd broken me, but they didn't know I was already gathering the pieces to strike back, and their own deceit was about to become their downfall. The park bench in Atlanta, where I slept, felt like the end of the line. At 17, I'd been kicked out of my home, branded a neglectful sister by my parents' lies, and hunted by their hired private investigator. My clothes were stuffed in a garbage bag, my dreams of college buried under their betrayal. I was alone, shivering in the humid night, until a familiar voice broke through the darkness. "Emily, is that you?" It was Ms. Harper, my old middle school English teacher, her car idling nearby. She'd been driving home from a late parent-teacher conference and spotted me curled up under a streetlight. Her eyes widened at my disheveled state, and before I could stop myself, the whole story poured out. My parents' shame, the investigator, the CPS accusations, and the locks changed against me. Ms. Harper didn't hesitate. She bundled me into her car, drove me to her small apartment, and handed me a mug of tea. "I always knew something was wrong," she said, her voice steady but laced with anger. "You were 12, showing up to school with baby formula on your shirt, signing permission slips for your siblings." She revealed she'd kept a journal over the years, documenting every time I'd missed class to care for a sick sibling or arrived exhausted from night feedings. She'd even contacted CPS once, but my parents' charm had brushed it off. Now, her journal was a goldmine, pages of evidence that I'd been parentified, forced to raise my 6 siblings while mom and dad pocketed government childcare assistance. But my parents weren't done. The next morning, as I hid out at Ms. Harper's, Ava texted me in a panic. Mom had found out Ms. Harper was helping me and was threatening to sue her for defamation. "They're saying she's spreading lies about our family," Ava wrote, her words trembling through the screen. I felt sick. Terrified, I dragged my teacher into this mess. Ms. Harper, though, was unfazed. "Let them try," she said, her jaw set. "I've got copies of those assistance applications they lied on, and I know a lawyer who owes me a favor." She'd tracked down public records showing my parents claimed thousands in childcare funds while I did all the work. Proof of their fraud. Ms. Harper's courage was a lifeline, a spark of hope in the darkest moment. Her journal and those records were weapons I could use to fight back. But my parents' threats were escalating, and I knew they'd stop at nothing to protect their lies. Ava's recordings and Ms. Harper's evidence were my only chance to turn the tables, but the battle was far from over. They thought they could silence me, but they didn't know a storm was coming, one that would expose every secret they'd buried. The courtroom in downtown Atlanta felt like a battlefield, and I, Emily, was armed with nothing but truth and desperation. At 17, I'd been kicked out of my home, slandered by my parents' hired investigator, and nearly broken by their lies to Child Protective Services. But Ms. Harper's journal, Ava's secret recordings, and those damning public records were my arsenal. As I sat on the hard wooden bench, clutching Ava's phone, my heart pounded. My parents, Linda and Mike, sat across the room, dressed in their Sunday best, playing the part of devoted parents. Their smug glances said they thought they'd won, but they didn't know the storm about to hit. The CPS caseworker, Ms. Carter, took the stand first. She laid out the case with chilling clarity. My parents had collected over $40,000 in childcare assistance over 8 years, claiming they paid for professional daycare while I, a child myself, did all the work. Ms. Harper's journal was entered as evidence, pages detailing my exhaustion, my missed school days, my role as a surrogate mother since age 7. Then came Ava's recordings. The courtroom went silent as my mother's voice crackled through the speakers. "We paid that investigator good money to make Emily look bad. She needs to learn her place." My father's gruff laugh followed. "College? She's not going anywhere." The judge's face hardened, her pen scratching furiously. My parents tried to squirm out of it. Mom sobbed, claiming the recordings were misunderstood, while Dad blamed me, saying I'd manipulated Ava to frame them. Their lawyer, a slick family friend named Greg, argued the assistant's funds were clerical errors. But Ms. Carter was relentless. She presented bank records showing the money funneled into Mom's shopping sprees and Dad's gambling debts. The final blow was a signed affidavit from the benefits office confirming my parents had lied on every application. The judge's voice cut through their excuses like a blade. "This isn't just fraud. This is child endangerment. You exploited your daughter for profit." I felt a weight lift, but my parents' faces told a different story. Mom's tears turned to panic. Dad's fists clenched, his eyes burning with rage. They shouted at the judge, "We were just doing what families do." The judge wasn't having it. She ordered a criminal investigation into their welfare fraud and barred them from contacting me until the case was resolved. As the gavel slammed, Ava squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her face. We'd exposed their lies, but the victory was bittersweet. My parents thought they could bury me, but their own greed had dug their grave. Now I faced a new fight, not just for my freedom, but for the siblings still trapped in their shadow. The courtroom victory felt like a fleeting gasp of air before plunging back into the storm. At 17, Emily, had exposed my parents' $40,000 welfare fraud and their cruel lies to keep me chained as a surrogate mother to my 6 siblings in our Atlanta home. But Linda and Mike weren't done. As the criminal investigation loomed, they sank lower, hatching a desperate plan to silence me before the final hearing. I was about to learn just how far they'd go to protect their crumbling empire of deceit. It started at the coffee shop where I worked. I was wiping down tables, still reeling from the CPS ruling, when a man in a dark hoodie slid into a booth, his eyes locked on me. He didn't order, just sat there, scribbling in a notebook. My stomach churned. His stare felt like the private investigators all over again. The next night, he was back, this time closer, muttering under his breath about ungrateful kids loud enough for me to hear. My hands shook as I poured espresso, fear creeping up my spine. Then, on my walk home, he followed me, staying just far enough to avoid suspicion. At a stoplight, he leaned in close, his voice a hiss. "Drop the case, or you'll regret it." I froze, heart hammering, and bolted to Ms. Harper's apartment, where I was staying. Ava, my 16-year-old sister, was my saving grace again. She'd been sneaking around, sensing our parents' desperation. That same night, she texted me a video she'd recorded outside our house. In it, Mom was on the phone, her voice frantic. "Pay him whatever, just make Emily back off before the hearing." Dad's growl cut in. "She's ruining us, scare her good." Ava had caught them hiring this thug to intimidate me. Without hesitation, she posted the video online, tagging local news outlets and CPS. By morning, it had exploded. Thousands of views, comments flooding in, calling for justice. The hashtag #SaveEmily trended in Atlanta, turning my parents' scheme into a public scandal. The police acted fast. They traced the man from the coffee shop, a lowlife with a rap sheet, and arrested him for harassment. He spilled everything, confirming my parents had paid him to threaten me. The judge added witness intimidation to their charges, a move that tightened the noose around their fraud case. Ava's bravery and the public's outrage were a shield, but I still felt exposed, like a target in my own city. My parents had tried to break me again, but their plan backfired, lighting a fire under the community and pushing me closer to justice. The final hearing was coming, and I knew they'd have one last trick, but I was ready to face it, with Ava and a city behind me. The public outrage over my parents' threats gave me a fleeting sense of power, but it couldn't erase the weight pressing down on me. At 17, I, Emily, had exposed my parents' $40,000 welfare fraud and their vicious attempts to silence me, first with a private investigator, then a hired thug. The Atlanta courtroom had stripped them of their lies, but now I faced a choice that felt like a new kind of trap. Ms. Carter, the CPS caseworker, sat me down in her cramped office, her voice gentle but firm. "Emily, your siblings need a stable home. Your parents are facing prison. Would you consider taking guardianship?" My stomach twisted. Freedom was so close, yet my 6 siblings, plus the newborn on the way, were staring down a future in foster care without me. I wanted to scream no. I'd spent a decade raising them, changing diapers at 7, missing school to soothe fevers, sacrificing my childhood for my parents' twisted tradition. The thought of choosing that role again made my chest tighten, like I was suffocating under the same old chains. I'd fought so hard for community college, for a life where I could be Emily, not Mama. But then I pictured my siblings scattered across foster homes, little Sophie who clung to me at night, the twins who'd started calling me by my name after years of Mama, and Ava, my 16-year-old sister, who'd risked everything to save me. Could I abandon them to a system that might break them like it almost broke me? Ava was the one who shifted the ground beneath me. She found me at Ms. Harper's apartment, her eyes fierce with determination. "We can do this together, Emily," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. "Not like before, where you carried everything. We'll be sisters, not slaves. I'll work part-time, help with the kids, make sure you still go to college. We can break the cycle for real." Her words painted a picture I'd never dared imagine. A family where love didn't mean sacrifice, where we shared the load instead of dumping it on one person. But it wasn't simple. Guardianship meant a bigger apartment, juggling school and work, and delaying my dreams again. The fear of failing them, of becoming my mother, gnawed at me. I spent a sleepless night weighing it all. Ms. Carter promised support, subsidized housing, counseling, childcare assistance, but the decision was mine. Ava's courage, Ms. Harper's faith, and the viral video that had rallied a city behind me gave me strength. I wasn't the scared girl who'd slept in a park anymore. By dawn, I made my choice. I'd take guardianship, but only with Ava as co-guardian, and only if we could build something new. A family where no one's dreams were crushed for the sake of tradition. My parents had tried to trap me, but this choice was mine, and it felt like the first step toward true freedom. Choosing guardianship was like stepping off a cliff, but with Ava by my side, I, Emily, was determined to land on solid ground. At 17, I'd fought through my parents' betrayal, $40,000 in welfare fraud, a private investigator, and a hired thug to reclaim my life in Atlanta. Now I was building a new one, not just for me, but for my 6 siblings and Ava, my 16-year-old sister and co-guardian. We moved into a subsidized 4-bedroom apartment in a quiet Atlanta suburb, far from the chaos of our old home. The walls were bare, but we painted them bright colors, turning the space into a sanctuary where love meant choice, not obligation. The first weeks were messy. Sophie, the youngest, had nightmares, calling for Mama until I taught her my name, Emily. The twins, Lucas and Lily, acted out, testing if we'd abandon them like our parents did. Ava and I leaned on CPS's promised support. We hired a licensed babysitter for after-school hours, ensuring I could attend community college classes. We enrolled the kids in therapy, where they began unpacking years of confusion and neglect. Ms. Carter connected us with a trauma counselor who taught us how to respond to tantrums with patience, not punishment. Slowly, the house filled with new sounds, laughter during board game nights, the twins arguing over crayons, Sophie giggling as Ava braided her hair. I was juggling college, a part-time job at a new coffee shop, and guardianship, but it felt different this time. Ava worked weekends at a bakery, contributing to bills and splitting chores. We set rules. No one carried the load alone. When I studied late, Ava handled bedtime stories. When she had exams, I cooked extra meals. The kids started school in a better district, their grades climbing as therapy helped them heal. One evening, Lucas tugged my sleeve while I cooked dinner. "Emily, can I stir?" he asked, using my name for the first time. I handed him the spoon, my eyes stinging. This was what family could be. Shared moments, not forced sacrifices. My own dream stayed alive. I aced my first semester, earning a scholarship to cover textbooks. The coffee shop manager, who knew my story from the viral video, gave me flexible shifts. Ava and I were rewriting the script our parents had forced on us. No more eldest daughter curse, no more stolen childhoods. Our home wasn't perfect. There were still tears and late bills, but it was ours, built on trust and second chances. My parents had tried to chain me to their toxic tradition, but Ava and I were proving that family could be a place where everyone got to grow. As Ava and I built our new family in our Atlanta apartment, the old one crumbled under the weight of its own lies. At 17, I'd exposed my parents' $40,000 welfare fraud, their hired investigator, and their thug sent to scare me silent. The courtroom had been their reckoning, and now the consequences hit like a tidal wave. Linda and Mike, my parents, stood trial, their faces hollow as the judge sentenced them to 3 years in prison for fraud, child endangerment, and witness intimidation. They were ordered to repay every cent of the stolen $40,000, plus penalties. Their house, the one I'd been locked out of, was seized to cover the debt, leaving them with nothing but their regrets. The news spread like wildfire through our extended family, fracturing it along fault lines that had been hidden for generations. My grandmother, Ruth, the matriarch who'd preached eldest daughter duty as gospel, called a family meeting to defend my parents. "Emily's a traitor," she declared, her voice sharp over the phone to relatives. But the younger generation pushed back. My cousin Sarah, who'd raised her siblings under the same toxic tradition, stood up at the meeting, her voice trembling. "This isn't duty, it's abuse. I won't do it to my daughter." Others followed, aunts and cousins admitting they'd been forced to sacrifice their dreams too. The room erupted, older relatives clinging to tradition, while the younger ones demanded change. By the end, the family was split, some vowing never to speak to me, others quietly texting their support. My parents' downfall rippled further. Dad's construction crew shunned him after the scandal, his reputation in tatters. Mom lost her part-time job at a hair salon when clients recognized her from the viral video Ava posted. In prison, they faced the reality of parenting from behind bars. No more dumping their kids on me. No more cashing assistance checks for their vices. Ava kept me updated through court reports. Mom wrote letters begging for forgiveness, but they felt hollow, like her old crocodile tears. Dad stayed silent, his pride too stubborn to bend. The family I'd known was gone, torn apart by the truth I'd forced into the open. It hurt, but it was a clean pain, like cutting away a festering wound. Ava and I were building something better, proving that love didn't mean sacrifice. My parents had tried to bury me in their lies, but their collapse was their own doing, and it cleared the path for us to rise. The dust of my parents' downfall settled, and at 18, I, Emily, stood taller than I ever thought possible. Ava and I had built a new family in our Atlanta apartment, raising our 6 siblings with love, not obligation. The scars of our past, my parents' $40,000 fraud, their investigator, their hired thug, faded as we filled our home with laughter, therapy sessions, and hope. I was juggling community college, a coffee shop job, and guardianship, but I wasn't alone. Ava, now 17, was my partner, splitting chores and dreams with me. We'd broken the cycle that chained us, proving family could be a choice, not a cage. Last month, I got a letter that made my heart soar, a scholarship to finish my community college degree and transfer to a 4-year university. It wasn't the Emory dream I'd lost, but it was mine, earned through nights studying at our kitchen table while Sophie drew pictures nearby. The ceremony was small, held in the college library, with Ava and the kids cheering from the front row. Lucas, one of the twins, waved a homemade sign, "Go Emily!" As I accepted the certificate, I saw our future, a degree, a career, a life where I could show my siblings that dreams don't have to die. Here's what I've learned, and I hope it stays with you. Don't let toxic traditions define your worth. My parents called it duty to trap me, but real love sets boundaries and lifts everyone up. If you're stuck in a cycle, whether it's family, work, or expectations, find your Ava, your Ms. Harper, the people who'll fight for you. Seek help, whether it's a teacher, a counselor, or a hotline. You deserve to chase your dreams without sacrificing your soul. And if you're struggling, share this story. Let it remind you that you're not alone and you're stronger than the chains holding you back. Ava and I are still writing our story. The kids are thriving. Sophie calls me Emily now, and the twins are acing school. My parents' prison sentences will end, but we're ready, armed with therapy, support, and a community that rallied behind us. I'm planning to study social work to help kids like us break free. This isn't the end, it's a beginning, a promise that we can build something better, one choice at a time. So take that first step, fight for yourself. You've got this.